Hey everyone, this is LocalALists, Tulsa's premier podcast, where we're going to be interviewing top performers here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm Stephen Morales.
And I'm James Pesh.
And enjoy the show. Do we want to say anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, welcome back. This evening we have a guest that is a friend and client of Steven's.
Yes.
So I'm going to let Steven do the introductions.
So we have Sterling Snead on the show tonight, and it's hard to describe what you do because you do so many different things. So the kind of the first thing that I want to set up is how many companies are you involved with? How many companies kind of does the family deal with?
Well, keep in mind some things are subsidiaries, but all in all, it's about 28 companies.
28, wow. So 28 different businesses and stuff like that. I do want to say thank you so much for doing this for us. It's late on a Sunday, and I know this kind of cuts into your family time. We're going to cover a handful of different things tonight, and we talked beforehand earlier this week, and you said that you kind of deal with 4 different areas in terms of business and stuff like that. What are those 4 different things?
I would say probably my focus is data science, technology, finance, and business management.
Awesome. What's the main company you deal with?
So one of the main companies is a mineral purchasing company. We buy oil and gas rights and such, but my personal main company is called Coretopia, and we deal with what we call concierge technology, or we coined it technology as a luxury because it actually kind of brewed out of all the different family companies needing technology. Yeah. We had a company a while back when I was in my late teens that dealt with some oil and gas software programming and also dealt with some low-end website design and kind of tinkered with a lot of different things. We ended up closing that company down, and as you saw, we have a small data center, and I was the only one that kind of halfway knew how it worked, so I ended up keeping it running and then kind of built a tech company out of that and realized that people need technology that just works. They want it to work in the background, and they want someone they can go to that almost brokers services to complete all the branding, marketing, design, custom software development, and that's kind of how everything grew. I would definitely describe my family as intense in a good way, but they're very intense and very ambitious, and so...
How old are you now?
I'm 29.
29? Okay. So when you were in your teens, it would have been roughly 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm very young.
You were developing a tech company in your late teens, which was 10 years ago.
Yeah, probably I would say. My first company was a video productions company when I was 17 that ended up doing all the stuff for all the equine things that my sister does. So competitions and different things. And then I decided that to get out of that business and just go back behind the data center. And I really like it. And so my job basically now is resident nerd. So if somebody needs something done, they come to me and they say, can you do this for us? And I say, well, if I don't know how, I'll go learn how to do it. And that's really been a good niche in the family, and I think is a good niche for a lot of businesses.
Now, were you passionate about that in your teen years, or is that something that just kind of, it was a necessity for your family? They needed somebody to do it, and so you just kind of went, I'll do it.
It was kind of my hobby when I was a kid, so I was always taking things apart, and I really did like technology. And then when I was 11, there was a place close by where you could buy all the computer parts to build a computer, and for $30, they would teach you how to put it together. And so that was great. It was kind of a little mini class, and I did that and just kind of went downhill from there. So,
is it mostly like putting together different types of hardware, or did they teach you how to like do soldering and all that type of stuff?
No. It's, a lot of people think building a computer involves a lot of soldering and stuff, but it's mainly 5 pieces and Legos.
Kind of like Legos.
It is. Yeah. It is, And so I learned that, and then I started hanging out with a lot of different people that were into tech. And when I graduated high school, I almost went into a computer science degree. And about a month before that, I decided to change to business because I really valued that my father made his own schedule and could spend time with his family. And I thought that it would really be I think there's a glass ceiling sometimes, especially with programmers. They end up kind of falling into a repetitive existence of coding every day and not really coding for themselves unless they venture out on their own. But so I went into that and then fell into finance, which I found out that I was pretty good at. I used to be horrible at finance. And so when I went into it, I thought, this is what the family's going to need. And so I went into basically corporate assessment, public company, stock trading. I could have gotten my Series 7 license, and then I went and asked if they wanted me to be a broker, and they said, no, just do stuff for the family. And I said, okay. So I just started trading for the family and doing investments. And then once you know IT, you can never go back. So everybody always asks you to fix their computer or do this or do that. And so I thought, I really just need to get back into this, and I just really need to do it. And nobody's going to have the family's interest at heart like I will. And I've come to find that that's a huge problem in the IT industry in general. People overpromise and underdeliver. And a lot of people say, well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And we spend a lot of money on development projects, on software projects, and nobody could actually deliver on what they said they could. So my wife's sister married an Irishman and moved to Cork, Ireland, which is one of the tech capitals of Europe. And when we were over there, we met a guy who had a degree in health informatics and basically became independently wealthy, built a company from the ground up, and we started working together. He manages about 20 programmers underneath him in Europe and 80 guys underneath him in India. And they did a year's worth of my former programmer's work. They had to rebuild it from the ground up, and they did it in 3 weeks with just a couple guys.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it was really great. So we teamed up with them. And then the next area that kind of, I think people really have to be adaptable in IT, because you have to see what trends are coming up, and you have to have the ability to get there before anybody else. And so one of the newest things is data science. You're hearing a lot of hype about data science, and Facebook kind of opened everybody's eyes to it. And so that's what I'm doing now. So I'm finishing up a bachelor's in mathematics, a bachelor's in computer science, and a master's in business. And because I figured if I'm going to start doing data science, I better know what I'm doing, and it's been paying off. My sister's building one of the largest equine database in the world.
Yeah, a shout out to her real quick too, Summer Stoffel, because we're trying to get her on the show so that she can talk about this. And part of doing that too, I mean, I want to do 1 or 2 shows and actually have you there to talk the data science for the second one. I want her to set up the premise, but
yeah, sure,
to have you there to actually talk about the work that's going into this thing.
Yeah, she's really interesting. She's basically a marketing genius. And when she was in her early 20s, if you wanted to certify a horse to breed, you had to either let it compete for 3 years and hope it didn't get injured, or send it back to the part of Europe that the breed originated. It was very expensive. And so when she was in her early 20s, she got all these crotchety old German guys to agree on a standardized testing. We were the only place in the U.S. that had it.
Yeah, just did the last test too, right?
We just did the last test, and the
now.
rules have changed on the testing over the past year, and then she just wanted to focus solely on the database because it's getting intense.
Yeah. So got this set up for Coretopia. The other thing that I want to talk about as far as the oil and gas, because I know you guys have multiple companies. You actually have Interlex, and then you have Magnolia that trades on the London Stock Exchange.
Yeah, it exchanges on the AIM market, the alternative investments market, which is a lot like the NASDAQ. So you have the London Stock Exchange, the AIM market, and the Plus market.
Okay. So you got this other company out in Europe. Everybody here that I talk to that isn't involved in oil and gas is talking about how amazing it is that these prices are lower and they're saving all this money. And I keep telling these people, you better shut up because Tulsa's economy is so based on oil.
Yeah.
Can you give, just for anybody that doesn't know, like some insight as to what's going on with all this, why the prices are lower, and then why it's bad for the Tulsa economy?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know an amazing amount of wealth information on this, but
basics,
I would say there's quite a lot of there's quite a lot of variables. People always complain about one thing when they really should be looking at all the variables. But what I can say is that right now the supply is too high. So, right,
Everybody's dumping just oil on the market.
if you figure supply and demand, okay, you have an oversupply, which the price drops. And so that's kind of what happened is oil dropped kind of because of a couple different factors and nobody cut production. And, that was the recent meetings with OPEC and Saudi Arabia. And you have a lot of things that are affecting it. The dollar value going up affects it as well. And refineries being full. And one of the things is that the break even that most people don't consider, like right now, oil is cheaper than beer per ratio.
That's crazy.
And so people think, well, I'm oil is so crazy, but it takes a lot of money to get it out of the ground.
Yeah.
And so with North Dakota, which is the largest oil field in the United States, the break even is $75 a barrel. And if we had continued on the path of that price, the United States would have been the top oil producer by 2020, more than Saudi Arabia.
Dang. But now they've slowed everything down.
Yeah. And so the price going down means that everybody up in North Dakota is cut off from their jobs and everything. And
is that primarily due to the current administration or no?
honestly, it's probably a lot of different variables.
Okay.
I think you're gonna have international relations, supply, current administration, rules. People are talking about taxation of the oil industry. It's probably going to take. We're predicting. This is our personal in-house thoughts. Is that if it's 40, if it averages 40 this year, we're going to be in good shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's going to take a while for it to recover, but Tulsa is very oil and gas dependent. You have a lot of attorneys, you have title offices, you have secretaries, you have people that and that filters down. So the people in the oil and gas, they have more disposable income. So they do more work with home automation companies, or they do more work with construction companies or alternative investments, and so it is going to seriously negatively impact. And the biggest thing this year is going to be after the first quarter. So after the first quarter, when the banks reevaluate all of the outstanding loans and call them due, you're going to have a lot of oil and gas companies go bankrupt, and then other companies are going to buy up all those assets, and it's going to end up being what everybody hates, which is fewer, larger oil companies.
Yeah. Do you think, because I talked with your dad, and I usually ask him, I was like, man, what's going on? Like, it keeps going down. It's making me personally nervous, because if people don't have money to spend, like, training's the last thing people want to spend money on. It's just a luxury for most. And it makes me nervous sometimes, but he's talking about the Saudis in Iran kind of having like this pissing contest almost going at it.
Yeah, they're trying to outbid each other on sales a little bit. And so that's definitely been a factor in it.
And then they just changed the law, right? They just open it up so that we can export, because before we couldn't export, right?
40-year ban on exporting, which everybody's, you're going to see all sorts of articles. It's going to be positive. It's going to be negative.
Yeah.
We won't really know until we get the data in.
I had somebody ask me this, and somebody that deals with oil and gas. Somebody was like, well, why are we even importing it? Just shut that down and we'll just go off American. I was like, man, somebody will just claim that there's a monopoly, and then people will flip out because this is oil price. It doesn't matter that it's from here. People are going to flip out about it. Yeah. Is that pretty much the case?
Well, that, and don't quote my numbers on this, but I believe that currently we're using more, obviously, than we produce.
Oh, really?
So
yeah,
we would have to. We would have to. Yeah, you can sustain it. You can sustain it, especially with North Dakota shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge oil reserve, because other areas that people are drilling in different things, it's a gas to oil ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of it's gas.
Do you think natural gas is going to be the next big thing? You think that's going to take over, like people are saying it is?
People have been talking about natural gas for a long time.
Yeah.
And people are saying, oh, oil's so restrictive, and it's it's such a limited supply, and honestly, the numbers off the top of my head is that, in certain fields and certain plays, only 20% of the oil has been drained. And Venezuela has one of the largest oil fields. They actually have the second largest reserves compared to the Saudis, but they need $120 to break even.
Yeah.
$120 per barrel. So oil production is going to, there's always enough oil in the ground. But honestly, if everybody's talking about electric, which I always say, look, I'm all for electric cars. I've test driven Teslas and different cars and different things, but really you're buying a coal car. Because where is your electricity coming from? The majority of electricity is generated through coal. So you're really the only, and you're not going to power a aircraft carrier or a lot of these larger equipments or 18-wheelers with electric yet.
Yeah.
The only thing that could ever rival would be solar.
Yeah. What about biofuels? Well,
potentially, maybe
Virgin went off bio. There, some of theirs, right?
Yeah, some of it does. So also there's also a dual relationship between ethanol and oil. So you need ethanol to produce oil, and you need oil to produce ethanol. A lot of people don't really understand that, but solar cells are only at 7% efficiency. If they ever got up to,
I heard out of Australia they had it was it's not out on the market, but it was 80%.
Yeah, if they have an 80, I heard a couple years ago that if they got up to 30, you could power everything in the world.
Yeah.
So they say they have 80. I would love to see it.
Have you seen the solar roads, by the way?
Yeah, those are amazing.
I just saw, like, just because of the blizzard, they did this thing. They're promoting it. They're like, these things heat up. Like if we had these out there, you wouldn't have to worry about the roads because guess what? We'll just melt the snow.
I know. And they have new electronic ones where they can shift around the formation signs or
They're like all that stuff's in there. You don't have to like
if a deer walks across the road, it lights up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really cool.
Yeah, really, really cool. So I'm hoping that actually takes off.
Never happened.
Yeah, probably won't. Like somebody will buy it out and bury it. But I was talking with one client, and he was saying, he's like, we'll have a change of industry before we run out of oil. He said 40. A little over 40 years is when he thinks he'll start to see that. And I was like, man, that's not my lifetime. I don't know about that. Like, I think that'll be like my son's lifetime is you'll see this shift from one thing to another. And I don't know if you know about Solazyme.
I've only heard a little bit.
They essentially take algae and they grow it. They put it in barrels and it grows. And then they have a biofuel. And it's essentially, they're like, oil is decayed in plant matter, right?
Yeah.
We just grow oil now and it grows for free. It's just because it multiplies so quick. And at the time, this was 8 years ago, they were producing, I think, 150,000 barrels of this stuff. I don't know what they're doing now. I got some stock invested in their company after they went public because I was like, if it did take off, I'd want to be down on the ground floor as far as investing. But yeah, do you hear people saying like how awesome it is that the oil prices are so low at the pump?
Well,
and all that?
But people, your average person can spend less at the pump, which is good for them, and I don't want to berate them because they have more money to feed their families or more money to do things. So it's going to be good and bad. It's a trend.
Yeah,
it's a trend, and so we've said all along that oil should have been at 75. It was at 100 for a while. So you're going to have an overcorrection, and then it's going to correct back. It's going to correct back. It's basically like a pendulum on a grandfather clock.
Yeah. When do you think, if it does, when are you guys kind of predicting?
Well, the last 10 years, there was a pattern of 40 to 100. So all I can say is if it follows that same trend, then it would do that.
Yeah.
But unless legislation or somebody comes in and changes something radically, then.
I like, by the way, I was talking with Brad Borum, a client of mine who was in oil and gas. He's actually just selling his company now. Is kind of breaking it apart. But talked about the tax that the Obama administration put on oil that nobody knew about because the prices were so low. So it did like this 10 or 11 cents jump.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what's going on? Nobody knew about it. They just snuck it in there.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on like that, like all of the technology laws that they're trying to sneak in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, about net neutrality. They basically broke that up into much smaller legislation and trying to pass.
That was a big thing. People were freaking out about that.
Yeah, they were. And so it got, well, technically it got passed, which is to most people, it means that it got canceled.
Yeah.
So, but what a lot of companies have done is broke it down into smaller legislation and trying to pass it through.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of those companies are media conglomerates with particular focus on cable and satellite providers. Yeah. Because Netflix is just putting them out of business.
Yeah. It's crazy. Blockbuster had a shot at that too, right? And they passed on it, if I believe correctly.
Yeah.
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 So where did you graduate, by the way? Is it TU?
So my whole schooling was very eclectic. So I went to public school for elementary, homeschooled middle school, went to Tulsa School of Arts and Sciences for high school, went to TU for 2 years. And then my family was starting to travel. They were going to go to Egypt and Greece for a while and stay with native Egyptians. And I was like, man, that sounds great. And so I went to TU, and they're like, no, we're not going to work anything out with you.
Yeah.
And so I left, and I finished online and finished at Kaplan, which was okay. It was good, but I love online things, especially now that I have a son and different things. I try to maximize my time. I just started a blog called appliedefficiency.com because everyone told me that I was crazy to try to do more degrees and different things. But when I was at TU, I was working full-time, going to school. I was doing like 19 credit hours at once, and then I was doing 70 hours of volunteer work a month. And I was not sleeping very much, and I met a girl there that was awesome. She really kind of changed my perception of efficiency. She got in on a Vogel scholarship, was double majoring in pre-med, worked as a baker. She was a national judo champion and got invited to train for the Olympics, not compete, but train. She turned it down, and she ended up running an apartment building on campus so she could get a free apartment.
Jeez.
And I was like, how are you not stressed? You seem so happy. So then I started really getting into how can people maximize their efficiency? How can they be productive? To me, being productive and efficient are two different things. A lot of people try to fill every moment of their day with productivity. To me, being efficient is saying, how can I automate some of these things?
Yeah.
How can I have a good friend who came up from Mexico, legal, married an American, and they came up here and had nothing. And within 4 years, he has a great job, great house, side business. But what he did is he works as a diesel mechanic, and they get paid per average hour cost of completion for a job. So if this one section of an engine takes 6 hours and he finishes it early, he gets paid 6 hours. So he developed ways to do it in 3 or 2.
Oh,
and
wow.
so basically, if people can compound that type of activity, because being efficient for me means being able to spend time with my son. And I think a lot more people are starting to catch on about passive income.
Yeah.
The family has a motto about residual income, which is why we focus on particular investments. A lot of our average, what we look at is 4 or 5 to 1 return within 2 to 3 years. So we tend to not look at anything less.
Yeah.
But what I started doing is, I had a Big Brother program, and I had kids out here that would help me out with certain projects, and I'd get some things done, and I'd hang out with them. But then what I started doing is getting into automation as well. There's a couple nerd things that you can do to kind of automate things. So there's a couple apps out called If This Then That, and you can say, well, if I'm leaving the gym, then text this person. Or
Yeah. Can you go into that a little bit? Because I know me and James have talked about this, and it's a quote from Tim Ferriss. He says, if you ever hear somebody say that they're too busy, like that's one thing that you shouldn't hear is anybody saying that they're too busy, because it just means they haven't automated certain things. Or the other one is the big thing that he says is start saying no. Start defining your day by saying no to things like I don't answer phone calls after X or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So what are some of the automation things that you can do? Because I know a lot of people that listen, if they have a business, like that's something that they need to do is automate.
Oh yeah,
these things.
I mean, when I was a teenager, our tech company was going around doing all the tech for a lot of oil and gas companies in Tulsa and OKC and stuff, and they were running their software on MS-DOS.
Yeah.
And not backing up correctly, and it was scary.
Yeah.
So for my efficiency, what I've done is I have a 8-step process. 1 is focus, 2 is organize, 3 is automate, 4 is delegate, 5 is refuse, 6 is actually do the work. I call it exert. 7 is contain, and 8 is review. So with the automation, there's numerous ways that you can automate things, but it's almost it's kind of a combination. Just like going to the gym and you get stronger and stronger and stronger, if you do a combination of refusing, delegating, and automating, then you start taking on more workload and more and more, and you just eventually get to the point where people are like, how are you doing this? You say, well, it kind of grew there, you know. I wouldn't walk into a gym and immediately expect to bench like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
right? Especially if a person who's never been in the gym. But if you go in and you work yourself up gradually. So with the tech stuff, what we've done is we've automated. There's 4 different things. There's a couple good books that you can do on automating with Python. Python's a programming language. There's kind of I'm a hacker and security guy too, and there's kind of a nice little myth in the computer world that was verified about a guy who did shell scripting. So shell scripting means that you write these little tiny programs that automate things throughout your day. And one of the things he did was he would automate the coffee maker. So apparently he got a hold of the coffee maker, hacked it, installed Linux, and then told it to make a coffee within, I think it was like 17 seconds.
Is this the one that had the video camera on it too?
No, I think that's you're thinking of a different one. But he when he left, they found all these tiny shell scripts on his computer. And so they started going through them and figuring out what it was. And one of them was if he wasn't sitting down and his computer was open. So if his computer wasn't open on certain days, it would by 8 a.m., it would automatically send emails out to his bosses and tell them that he was sick. But it was really after holidays and it was when he was wasted. But there's little things that you can do like that, especially in a business organization. So there's a whole field called management of information systems that deals with teaching a business how to sort and manage all of this raw data into information. But what people have failed to do themselves is learn how to manage the influx of information digitally through their portable devices. So one of the things that I do is I make sure that my calendars are pretty much running with everything. Right? It automates it, notifies me, and then if your schedule is automated, you don't have to think, well, I have to do this, I have to do that. So I make sure it's not what I would consider full automation, that's just good scheduling. But we use a combination of shell scripting, Python programming, and certain apps and calendaring, which is, basically just standard scheduling.
Yeah.
But anyways, what people have failed to do is manage this massive amount of data that's coming in. I mean, you look at little kids, they're struggling between the duality of having millions of hours worth of television on an electronic device, and then now they're having to do all of their schooling on the same device.
Yeah.
Developing that willpower or self-discipline is very hard. And so if you can automate the times that you do things, schedule the times that you do things, people don't go into the little nuances of technology where you can have auto reply emails to certain types of people, where you can write custom programs that say, one of the things we've gotten into is data mining. For instance, in one of the oil and gas companies, this person was pulling information off of the internet, and they were doing it by hand, and it would take them, because as it was one of their side tasks, it would take them about 2 to 3 months to complete. So what we did is we worked with the guys that I have now, 20 guys in Europe and 80 guys in India, and we built basically what are called scrapers. So there's multiple different types of things. A scraper is where you go out and you pull all of the data that's on a website and you store it in your own server. A crawler is where it goes out and looks for specific information on all the websites before it pulls it to you. So with a scraper, what we did is we just pulled all of this massive amount of data in, and then we have it auto aggregate into the database, and then it throws up basically like a notification to the research department, and then they can go through and see the duplicate data, newer data, and then they have the ability to merge it. So this saves us about 3 months of a couple employees' time. So but it's not, if you have the right people, it's not as complex as you would think.
Yeah.
We for my sister's equine database, we scraped between about 300,000 and 1 million records and imported them into her database in 2 weeks.
And
That's
these
intense.
records were, equine is horses.
Yeah.
So what type of records were you guys looking for?
So this was competition data.
Okay.
So there's multiple different
Trying to find out which
databases.
horses are awesome and which ones suck.
Yeah, and so
It boils down to.
oh man, it's the whole horse world. I've been around it since I was a kid, and I think that's why I am such a nerd, because I was always in the stands with cargo pants and Game Boys in my pockets and books and stuff. But she, so one of the big things is how fragmented the industry is. And this is kind of true with most industries. And what we did is we've started aggregating all of the breeding data. So you have the data about the horse. You have the inspection data and stats. You have pedigree and progeny. So you have its ancestry and then its children. And you have competition data. But if a person buys a horse and then they transfer it onto a different competition registry, let's call it, then they can actually rename the horse and no one can track it.
Okay.
So a lot of people were doing very bad things and taking horses that had medical problems, basically, air quote, rebranding them and then selling them for more than they were actually worth. So a microchipping law was just recently passed that requires horses who compete in certain federations to be microchipped. So what we've done is we've started scraping off all of this competition data, and then we're starting to, we've done a lot of R&D, and we're building out the analytics to where you could basically, it's called a standard deviation, like a bell curve in class. And you can say, like, with a 98% probability, if you breed in this lineage, this horse is going to compete on this level, be worth this amount, and have this medical problems.
Okay.
So I'm surprised nobody's done it before, because especially in the high-end equine industry, it's a high capital asset.
Yeah.
How difficult is it going to be to constantly update?
Well, that's what you do. So part of it is we've actually been getting data contracts with all the associations. So what you can basically build a plug called an API, and they plug into you, and then they just feed you the information directly.
Okay.
So as long as you build the programs correctly and everything, then it shouldn't be too hard. Yeah, and in fact, we built them a back end to where they can go in and manually sift through the data and edit anything that they need to be. A registered, authorized person of the federation. But because that was one of the big problems. How do you get verified data?
Right.
How do you get uncorrupted data? Because some companies were going about the way of saying, well, the user can enter in data.
Yeah.
Well, people lie. So
Well, it's funny too, is you like the resistance that you guys have gotten, because there's people in there that are freaking out that their job is at stake because they've been dealing with the data.
Yeah.
And now they're like, this isn't a good thing. Like, her program's bad. Da, 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 da. Like,
well, it's been we finally had a recent breakthrough.
yeah.
We finally had a recent breakthrough. One of the guys that was running one of the federations that was opposing us was removed, and I guess there was some other bad things going on. But now it's kind of opened up the way, and we've got in many data sources, and things are going fast. So it's going good.
So what would you say would be, let's say somebody has a new business, 2 or 3 apps, programs, or whatever that they immediately should get, they're going to help them manage their time and automate things?
Well, they're just starting a business, you said?
Just starting the business.
Well, you definitely...
Or maybe that's their first or second year.
Okay. Well, you definitely need to make sure that a website is set up.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have a website. Make sure that you have a brand. Make sure that you're doing some SEO on the website. Make sure that, I would say, try to link in as much as you can to your mobile devices. So you're talking apps, IFTT. There's another one I think called Rework, and really focus on project management as well. One of the reasons the software company's been doing really well is because we implemented this new methodology called, I guess it's a framework called Scrum. So it's an agile methodology, but a Scrum framework. So before, where you would have to develop software over a period of like a year, and there were a lot of some miscommunications, what you do now is you develop a couple features in chunks of like 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And so project management is really important on that. So if you do have a business with multiple people, Basecamp is a good app that focuses on project management. There's a couple others. Week Done is one where you can see your employees log at the end of the week what they've done, and you can see it in like a nice little report. Try to link in, if you can afford it. I really like QuickBooks Online, because then you can actually create.
I have to do that this next week. I've just been putting it off.
Well, it's a lot cheaper than the desktop version.
2 years ago, tried to use it and went, nah, too much work.
It is. Now I can sit down and learn a software program pretty quick because I've been benching that area for a while.
Yeah.
But QuickBooks Online is a lot cheaper than the QuickBooks Desktop.
Yeah, that's what I've been looking at.
People
too.
can afford it, and then you can actually create logins for your employees, and then
Yeah.
they can log their time and then send it to you, and you can actually just have it auto send to be billable to the client. So you enter in the client's contact information, and then you can also set up auto pay through it.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
and then you can also have it auto connect to your accountant, and it will generate all the reports for them. So that's what I'm saying is there's a lot of ways for people of any income status or business level to automate those things, but it requires going out onto the app stores, going out and doing Google searches and looking for stuff.
It's I think it's $12 a month for the QuickBooks Online right now.
Yeah, there's a couple.
It is a
different
tax
plans.
write-off, so if you have a small business, it's not a big deal. But yeah, I've been postponing that because I want to actually sit down for a couple hours and mess with it so I can figure it out.
Yeah, so I don't know what I should do on time, but if we're doing good. But the one of the things that I wouldn't call automation, but I would call condensing, is how I learn. So I'll never forget, and they'll probably listen to this and give me flack for it. But when I was doing my Big Brother program with two of the kids, I said, okay, I need you to watch this YouTube video, and here's what I need you to do. Here's the YouTube video on how to do it. And they said, well, can't you just tell us? I said, are you telling me that you would rather waste my time than watch like a short YouTube video? And they said, yeah. I said, man, remove yourself from my presence right now. I'm really, just no. And so what happens is people are refusing to, what my mom calls, eat their vegetables, which is put in the time and work. And people come to me with software projects, and I said, look, this is going to be boring, and it's going to be tedious, and it's going to be long. But if you can work through it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple great things that I use. There's so much information out there for free now. I mean, you have iTunes University. You have a really good site called edx.com. You have another one called Udemy, udemy.com. You have udacity.com, coursera.org, and lynda.com is one that I use. And so, for instance, you can go to lynda.com, pay like $9 a month, and they have thousands of courses. It's basically like the Netflix of learning. And they talk about business, they talk about QuickBooks, they talk about tech stuff, they talk about programming. Safari Books Online allows you to pay like $30 a month, and you can basically download and read any programming book, and they have a lot of business books as well, instead of having to dish out like $80 per programming book.
Yeah.
And so if people, focused on just a couple of those subscriptions, Udemy.com does sales all the time during the holidays, and you can get like $300 courses for $10. And that's what I do is I just mass as much information as I can, and then I have it on my phone. And when I put my little son to sleep or something, he's asleep on me, I can watch something or learn something. And, you don't need to pack in productivity all the time, but
Yeah.
it helps.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I find interesting is that as far as like school and stuff like that, it's kind of shifting towards that. I mean, college is expensive, like insanely expensive. So I don't think you necessarily need that. It's good to have the degree, but the piece of paper is just telling somebody that you're trainable.
Yeah.
So using things like Udemy and stuff like that, where you can find other people that are masters in whatever field that you're looking for. And that one covers a lot. I mean, they have like, I know the famous one is Neil deGrasse Tyson's on there talking about like the cosmos or something like that. But cooking, if you want to get into programming, I actually have one at the house. It's how to tell good stories, like and how to write good stories. So there's a ton of information out there, and it's not expensive compared to what you're going to pay. Some of the prices are like what you would pay just for the textbook for a college course, not even like the tuition, just the textbook.
Yeah, and my sister and I were a little bit before our time because we wanted to learn online.
Yeah,
because the family was traveling, and I was a bit of an odd duck when I went to TU because I was a commuter, and I was basically wanting to learn the information for the job that I already needed to fill.
Yeah,
and so something came out called Massive Online Open Courses. You guys probably already know about them, but they're basically free courses, and a lot of different universities have them. And you can take them for free, and then you can actually pay like ranges $60 to $200, and you can take like a proctored test, and it'll be a certification. Well, a lot of companies are treating these courses, so If you took an online course from MIT and you passed and it was a certified test, then a lot of employees are saying, well, this is a certification, you know. And what I'm doing right now is my bachelor's in mathematics is from Southern New Hampshire University online, and my MBA I'm transferring from OSU to a different one, but OSU has a lot of online stuff. And then my bachelor's in computer science is from Franklin University, which is a university like Tulsa up in Ohio.
Awesome.
And so what I focus for people come to me and they ask about learning. I say you need to make sure that it's nonprofit. You need to make sure that it's accredited. And you really need to look at some of the different certifications or different culture and atmosphere of the university. Because especially if you focus on nonprofit, it's going to be a lot more respectable to employers.
Yeah. So number one course you would recommend for anybody, I mean, regardless of whether or not they're doing online stuff, but if they are, if they're not, number one course you would recommend to somebody?
Well, I can't say that I would recommend a certain course because everybody's different, but I do have 2 books that I saved up for you guys. One of them is called Talent is Overrated by Jeff Colvin. It's spelled like Geoff, though, Geoff, Colvin. And the second one is The Genius in All of Us by David Schenk. I think what happens with a lot of people is they think that they can't do these things. And they start limiting themselves. It's just like a person working out and going to the gym. They start limiting themselves and saying, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this. When I was a kid, I was bad at math. And my mom bought me a video game that helped me learn it. And I used to be bad at finance. And I broke myself learning it, but I learned it. And so in Talent is Overrated, Colin talks about how the myth of Mozart. People are like, well, yes, genetics plays into it, but people always quote Mozart. But it's a little known fact that Mozart, they say, well, he wrote symphonies when he was 3. Well, Mozart's father was basically a music professor who quit his job as soon as Mozart was born. And then he devoted all of his time to teaching Mozart music. All of his symphonies, basically, until he was 12, were written in his father's hand and contained pieces of his father's music. Then he started studying under Bach and used pieces of Bach's music until he was in his early 20s. And we never listened to anything that he wrote under the age of early 20s. So people like to quote things and say, well, I'm basically predestined for this, or I can't do this, but people can learn whatever they want to learn.
Yeah. What's the other one? The Genius in All of Us
By David Schenk.
Schenk. What does that cover?
So it basically covers the combination between time and effort and also genetics. Yes, there may be some limiting factors. People have disabilities. I knew, there's a disability out there that is almost like an extreme form of ADHD and dyslexia where you have to put a pink sheet over anything that you read in order to actually see the letters.
Oh, wow.
And I met a guy that had this, but he is now he's a wealthy investor in London.
Yeah.
And so, but he had to take his test a few times over, doing stuff like that. But it basically talks about how hard work, dedication, and willpower can basically help people achieve their dreams.
Yeah.
And my dad has been a big influence. I think people should go out and find mentors, whether it's in person or figuratively, people that they look up to, because my father taught me a couple principles that has led me well through life. And one of them is you can hear the sound of anything except money rattling and meat frying.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody will tell you anything except actually come through.
Yeah.
And another one was you can do what's right no matter what anyone else around you is doing. So I think a lot of people tend to focus on the actual money aspect.
Yeah.
But if they just started focusing on the actual project.
Yeah.
I mean,
he has one that I like that I've used before. It's the do you see things? What is it? Is it hold apart? What's the
part to whole and hold apart?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
can you cover that real quick? Because I really like the saying as far as how you see the world around you.
Yeah. So basically, a simple illustration would be a person pulls out a puzzle. What's the first thing they do? Do they look at the picture, or do they just rip the box open and dump the pieces out?
Yeah.
Okay, so a part to whole is the person who dumps the pieces out and just starts connecting up the puzzle pieces. But sometimes those people are very fast at it. And then you have the hold apart that has to know what they're putting together.
Yeah.
And so they have to see the whole picture before they can even begin to focus on the details. And he loves to quote that because him and my mother are opposite.
Yeah, me and Samara are opposites, and that's why when he said that, I was like, man, that fits because me and her are the exact opposite.
Yeah, and so as long as you recognize that and can work with it, a lot of it's working with your personality and working with how you view things. If you know you're a hold apart, you often have a tendency to think of these huge ideas and then not follow through.
Yeah.
If you're part to whole, you often restrict yourself by not trying to find larger pictures or larger goals.
Yeah.
And there's some great books. I forgot her name, but she wrote Time Management from the Inside Out and Organization from the Inside Out. Basically, you take a personality test and figure out what type of personality you are and how to proceed from there. Certain people aren't going to organize the same way. Certain people aren't going to do time management the same way. I mean, that's why companies are now doing personality tests or the Myers-Briggs test.
Myers-Briggs test. Yeah. Before they actually hire the person and stuff like that.
But yet again, you got to make sure that you don't restrict yourself.
Yeah.
Some people are like, well, that's my personality. I can't learn that.
Yeah.
I'm artistic, so I can't do math. So I have actually worked really hard and changed 2 of the letters in my Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
Because
really?
Yeah, because I was a very artistic person. If I had, my mom says I would be happy with just a guitar on the beach somewhere.
Yeah.
And especially when I was a teenager, and
you have like a recording thing in your house, right?
Yeah, I play music, not as much now that my son's born, but I need to get back into it. But so I basically forced myself to learn these complicated and technical things, and
then the big thing we've talked about on some other shows, the neuroplasticity, just being able to kind of train your brain and rewire it. But you got to reinforce the thing. You can't just do it once and then I can't do that, and then just drop it, move on to the next thing, which is what most people do. It's irritating if I see somebody they don't want to put in the hard work that goes along. They want the prize, they just don't want to do the work for the prize.
And that's what we found with a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, well, I want to work with you, and I want to do this, and I want to, build this, have what you have. And I say, okay, and let's do it together. And then they're like, I can't.
Yeah, I can't.
I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I just don't want to.
Yeah.
And I said, okay.
Yeah, moving on.
Yeah.
Advice, and it's kind of like a rapid fire question, but I do want to bring it up now just because we're on the topic. Advice for millennials, our generation, because
our generation younger, or just our generation?
Just millennials in general. I mean, anybody in early 30s to early 20s. If you have any advice.
There's a lot. I focus on creating value. Okay. So people often focus, like I said earlier, either on the dollar or on the end result, or having things. And I forgot the name of the book and the guy, but this guy wrote a very interesting book that talked about how basically 80% of the people on Real Housewives are bankrupt.
Are you serious?
And so people love to show off what they own and show off different things. But every person that I've met who was either really wealthy, we just had a friend pass away this last weekend who was one of the heirs to the Hoover vacuum fortune, but he drove a Honda. You think of Sam Walton,
Yeah.
You think of basically all of the top-notch investors you think of. A lot of them don't live elaborate lifestyles.
Yeah.
And so with talking with millennials, focus on value. And there's 3 ways to really make money or basically build up businesses. You either work harder than everybody else, you inherited it, or you penny pinch.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people work hard, but they don't work smart, and they don't have opportunities. So if you see an opportunity, seize it, work hard, and then figure out how to automate it or cut your time in half. And I'd say with a lot of millennials, they are being lied to. They're being lied to by academic advisors and all of these people, because they'll tell you, go to college, get this degree, and you're going to have $90,000, $90K a year starting salary in a corner office. And we interview people all the time, and they're like, well, I can't. What are you talking about? I'm not going to make $150K a year starting out. We're like, nope, no, you're not. And so that's the big advice for millennials is do your own research with everything. Don't let somebody just tell you something.
Yeah.
if it's about your job or how to learn or, your family, do your own research on stuff.
That's why I love those Facebook posts where it's like it'll be some article, doesn't matter what it is. Usually you see it on health and fitness, like eggs are bad. And then you'll read the article and this person's like, according to this, and like, so they're sourcing another article that talked about it.
Yeah.
And then you go to that article and that person read the research paper. And then like, you're like fifth down the line
Yeah.
and they've changed and construed things because people know how to read research papers. And so they're like, you know what, see, because this time or whatever it is. And that's the problem with the research that's getting put out there now is they can skew it and change it. Unless you read the actual research paper, I mean, this might not have anything to do with what they're actually claiming.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Because I see that happen, just like I said, more or less with the health industry. And that's like an everyday thing. Some new thing is coming out in the health industry, some new craze or something like that. And it's like everything in moderation. Like,
yeah.
like
people are getting easily distracted by things and they get sidetracked, like you're saying. And, a huge problem is if you talk about entertainment and different things, the average, the last time I read the stat, so you can double check this on don't believe, is that the average American watches about 5 hours of television a day, which amounts to about 10 years of their life.
It's crazy.
And so that doesn't even count the amount of time that they're on their cell phone. And so my goal was to stop thinking about what information I'm outputting and what information I'm inputting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you could do so much in that amount of time. 10 years, even if you just cut it down to half, you could have a couple degrees or you could go travel or, there's a lot of different things. And so interpersonal communication is also waning. I mean, you go in and you see somebody and I'm a tech guy, right? But I think it was because I grew up on tech. You're playing your Game Boy and somebody starts talking to you and you're trained, okay, I'm going to set this down. I'm going to talk to the person and then I'm going to pick it back up, So, but people are too focused on distractions and balance, like you're saying, moderation, moderate. Yeah. I play games. I watch movies,
It's hard. And it's like hard to find time. You're like, all right, I got like 20 minutes to play this really, really quick.
Yeah.
And then get that done. And you're like, all right, that was good. Move on to the next thing.
Yeah. I mean, but once you get up to the point, you start compounding like you would fitness.
Yeah.
Right. Like this morning, I got up early with my son and he was eating breakfast and watching cartoons. And I did a week's worth of one of my classes in 3 hours in the morning, and so you start finding little nooks and crannies. And so I always use the illustration of the golf ball, marbles, and sand. You probably heard this one, but you have a jar and you're trying to fit things in.
Yeah.
You have to put the golf balls in first. You have to put the marbles in second. You have to put the sand in third.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would think that, learning, or especially after you graduate, would be a golf ball, but it's really sand. Your family, work, your health is usually the golf balls. Job and it's kind of a combination. Job and little continued education, different things are marbles and sand, and you just let it fill in the cracks. And it happens a lot easier than people think it does.
Yeah. Just kind of touching back on Coretopia before we finish out here. I do want to get to the social media stuff, but just go a little bit more in depth because you're actually building my website for me. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Sure.
And what you guys have done so far and what we've talked about and all that looks phenomenal. And once it does get done, and I'm hoping to include some of the automating and stuff like that, it's going to be really, really cool. What do you guys do? SEO? I mean, you're building websites. What else? Like, so if somebody's coming to you for business for this stuff, what do you guys do, service and provide?
Well, we do quite a few different things, and part of that is because we've partnered up with multiple different companies or hired out other sources, but we call ourselves Green Luxury IT, and our services are basically concierge, so anybody can come to us with anything that they want done. We offer hosting. We have our own data center, and we just partnered up with a 28 data center facility in the United States. They're HIPAA medical compliant, they're government compliant, and we're expanding our own data center. We do design and marketing. I teamed up with another guy, Organi Studios, who is amazing. He's doing some work for multiple large people.
Yeah,
Holy Guacamole,
really
yeah.
Good.
And then
did he do who did your logo?
He did our logo.
Yeah.
And then we do high-end programming. We do basically any language you can think of. We can scale up as much as you need. any programmers. We've built very large applications for health insurance or hospitals. We do private and hybrid clouds. So we build our own clouds in the data center, which was breaking my brain learning that one.
Yeah.
We also do something called managed colo, where people can host servers in our data center as backups. And then we do on-site consulting and then outsourcing. So let's say you have an IT department and you want to lower the cost in your company, which you're going to see a lot with oil and gas companies. And so we'll do the majority of it remotely. And then we also have partnerships with different companies in town. So if you need somebody on site, they can do that.
Do you guys do any social media stuff? Like
Yes.
Building that? Or?
So we do. We also do search engine optimization. We do Google AdWords, and we do have someone that can manage social media accounts if you want that done. It kind of depends on the scale. We've got people that manage really high end social media accounts, so it kind of just fluctuates. Depends on what the person wants, and then they can come to us and say, "Look, I want this list of services." We're basically like a technology buffet. You go up and you pick what you want, and then we'll put it together for you.
Yeah, your SEO report, because you do my SEO also, and you gave it to me, and it was like this huge, and half the stuff I didn't know what it was. How important for a business is SEO? Because for some, like, we go back and forth, especially in the fitness industry, we're like, man, it doesn't help us any, or it does help us, and it's because our business is mostly word of mouth. But for your average person that has a website,
search engine optimization is very important. It's also a little time consuming. So my data center partner, like for instance, talking about automation, my data center partner and I, he used to do security work for the CIA. So we build our own firewalls now, which saves you thousands of dollars. We're filing a patent on a specific type of server rack and casing, but he invented a program that does search engine optimization automatically, which can help a business out, but it's also a lot lower cost.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to have to employ people to spend time on that stuff. But it's important for businesses that they kind of feel out the tech industry. Tech is no longer a separate industry. It's in everything.
Yeah.
That's why I'm teaching my nieces how to do stuff, because everybody needs to know a little bit about technology. They need to know how their website's doing. They need to know they need to make sure that they have their copies of their own files of all their websites and their documents, because some, horrible IT people will hold that stuff hostage.
And that's the cool thing, because I know you're building mine in WordPress, and we have the LocalAList one hosted through WordPress. It's hard to understand how to build this stuff, but when it's done, it'll actually be mine, because I was hosting it on Weebly. People use that. Wix. I think yours is on Wix, right, James? What's the other one? Squarespace. A lot of people do that, but they don't own that, right?
No, it depends. Like we dealt with yours, whenever we broke yours out, it kind of, is held hostage a little bit. And so people need to empower themselves by learning.
Yeah.
And they need to spend a little bit of time and say, look, I can save myself some money by doing this. And I always have the same saying with the tech industry: you can either pay a lot of money or you can spend some time learning it.
Yeah.
And so if people just put in a little bit of time, it would save businesses tons of money down the road. They know what they want to do. Maybe a business doesn't need to do search engine optimization. Maybe they just want a single landing page, but they can funnel that into other things in their business. Like one of my contacts in Ireland, they own one of the most profitable business per square foot in Cork, and they make sure it's a restaurant, and they make sure everything's automated in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Maybe businesses don't need a fully functional, crazy SEO, but they need something like that inside the restaurant.
Yeah.
So if they spend a little bit of time, figure out what they want to do, and that's one of the things that we do with consulting, is saying, look, you're going to waste money if you do this. Our best interest is for you.
Yeah.
And that's how Coretopia came about. It's an abbreviation of Core Utopian Technologies. It's because I built this for the family, and I wanted the same philosophy to carry out to other people. Like, look, I'm going to care about your business like it's my business.
Well, that's the cool thing too, is just you guys are very knowledgeable, and if I have a question or something like that, you know what it is. You'll look into it for me, and I feel taken care of, but also that you guys have my interest at hand. So if you're trying to do something like, dude, I don't think that, like, if I have an idea and you're like, no, that probably won't work. Like, all right, like, I trust you enough to be like, all right, let's move. Then that doesn't work. Let's go to the next thing.
Yeah.
What will work? Or I have an idea and it's like, hey, how do I automate this? What are my things? What I need to look into to help me with that?
Well, and if we don't know something, we'll tell you.
Yeah.
We'll say, I don't know. We'll go learn it, you know,
Yeah.
because there's no progress without hard work and humility. Humility opens the opportunity for learning, opens the opportunity for success, and hard work is what gets you there.
Yeah.
So you have to say, look, I need to learn these things. I need to do these things. And then if you're saying, okay, this is my weakness, now I need to go work on it. And then you put in the hard work. That's how people I've ever seen become successful.
Awesome. All right. So now we're going to get to some rapid fire questions. I just asked some really random quick fire succession questions. And then we'll go over all the social media stuff. We did this for the last one, and I kind of like this one. You got one item on you. What is that item if the zombie apocalypse goes down?
A zombie apocalypse?
A zombie apocalypse.
Can it be any item in the world? Why not like a... Oh, that's going to be cheap. That's like the genie question. You could just say like an anti-zombie laser gun. You know?
Yeah. No. This has to be like a legit item, but you can have anything. Something that does exist, but you can be anything. You want a tank? Take a tank.
A tank? Well, a tank would be amazing, but it's going to run out eventually.
Yeah.
You need like a sword.
Sword? Okay. What type of sword?
Like a samurai sword. Something that's light that you can run with.
Was it Michonne? Michonne. Yeah.
The Walking Dead.
Do you watch Walking Dead?
Mm-mm.
You don't?
No.
That's what she has a she has a samurai sword on that. Yeah.
5 hours a day to watch should be watching.
Okay. Yeah. She's probably really good with the samurai sword then. Yeah, because it never runs out of bullets.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that thing's so sharp.
Oh,
like you can sharp. Yeah. You can chop anything. Yeah.
I don't know how she chops off so many heads with that thing, but anyway.
What's funny is I'll watch that, and then like somebody gets attacked and they have a weapon like that, and it's like, what? Like, and I'm watching, I was like, nah, that went like these dudes are hacking people up,
right? And
then somehow they still get captured and then eaten alive. It just doesn't make any sense. Next one, one piece of advice that you want to give to your son. Now your son's two and a half. Mm-hmm. Like as an adult, one piece of advice that you want to give to your son.
Always have your priorities straight in life. You know, money can come and go. People define success very differently. But the greatest thing I'll ever leave behind is my son.
Yeah.
You know, so people need to make sure they have their priorities in check, and everything else will fall in line.
Yeah, most people put money or something like that, and then they end up
well, and sometimes unintentionally.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're wanting to provide for their family, and then
in the Western world, I would say money is the determining factor whether or not you're successful.
I mean, you got to always reevaluate yourself once in a while. And there's a Harvard Business Review book called On Managing Yourself, and it was written by a guy who went to Harvard with a bunch of the guys that ended up ruining Enron and a bunch of other companies. And they said, when they went to school, they weren't like that.
Yeah,
they got there one bad decision at a time.
Yep. One thing you think everybody should experience?
Other countries.
Other countries.
What's
your favorite country to visit?
I love Paris myself.
Yeah.
But I loved going to Egypt and Greece and everything. Egypt was so humbling.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we had some friends there, and I would say that they were middle class or above, or different, you know. But we just went around, and I took this picture that I'll never forget, where it's a woman holding her baby in an alley, and it's like 3 feet deep in garbage, you know. And so that's, people often labor under convenience here.
Yeah.
The convenience often misguides them into, you know, different bad decisions. But when you go and you experience the world, you see what's really out there. I talked to this woman the other day who hasn't been outside of a 5-mile radius in 10 years.
That's scary to me. That's like, it's like I feel claustrophobic if I hear that.
Right. But it helps.
I've got a client who almost refuses if a business or anything is more than 3 miles from her house. She's like, no.
Wow.
Doesn't matter how good it is or anything.
I get like the itch where I'm like, I've been like in this same like couple blocks or whatever for like I gotta leave, like I gotta get up and I gotta go somewhere.
Well, I think it helps kids to realize that, you know, what they're experiencing is not really the universal standard.
Yeah.
You know, and once I realized that, I mean, we realized with the family we could build something much greater if we stayed together. And I got a lot of flack from my friends.
Yeah.
And I said, look, in other countries they do that, and we'll build something much greater here. But
yeah, they live together. Like in most countries, like everybody lives in
or
the
different
same
floors,
house.
the building, or different things. And so, Yeah, and so when you go and you experience those things, you're like, wow, I'm going to seize every opportunity I can.
Yeah.
And you got kids complaining about their car that they just bought them being the wrong color.
Yeah, they're freaking out and they're
Yeah.
like having a fit. I always think of that. If you've seen the YouTube video of that World of Warcraft kid, I think his parents deleted the account, and like he comes in there and like he looks like a mental patient. Like he snaps, like he just loses his mind. So I want to thank you so much for doing this with us. If people want to get a hold of you, where can they go? Whether that's the Coretopia Facebook or anything like that.
How many times do you drop deuce?
Oh yeah.
What?
This has been a standard question we've been asking everybody.
Why?
When did
It's a health and nutrition related question.
Well, this was
with Jared's
Pro Pops.
He does probiotics.
And
so one of the questions
we're just keeping it out there too, 3 to 6.
Yep.
For me.
A few times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought there was something wrong with me until I asked Steven. He was like, "No, that's good." I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay."
Keep things going, man. Like if you have like major meals, so I tell people if you're having 3 major meals, you better be going right afterwards. Like something just came in, get rid of something else. Don't let it just sit there.
Yeah.
And I'll hear people, they're like, "Yeah, when I travel, I go like once a week." I was like, "What?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
I did clients, and he said his sister is like once like every 4 to 7 days.
Wow.
And I was like, did she just like stop eating? What happens? He's like, she didn't really eat that much to begin with, but like it starts to slow down. I was like, is it nerd? What is it? She's like, I don't know what it is.
That's scary.
Yeah.
It's a standing question.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to make sure you didn't do this.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So social media, where can people find you?
Well, we have my LinkedIn account, R Sterling Snead. Yes, my first name is just the letter R. It stands for Richard, but they didn't want me to have nicknames when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Over my grandfather. But so R Sterling Snead on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. You can find me. Also, just go to Coretopia.com, Coretopia.com. There's a contact form on there if anybody has any questions.
Awesome. Well,
were they afraid of Dick Snead? Is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, kids are mean, man. I have a friend named Richard Skinner.
Yeah.
And
nice.
he was not happy about that.
Had a kid in my high school named Lonnie Head, and his dad's name was Richard.
Yeah.
No, I trained this guy, Dick Peck.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes me sound British, I guess, or Sterling Snead. And although you do have National Pirate Day when you're in school, or or I get people that like, can your first name just be a letter? Because it's just a letter on my birth certificate.
Is that legal?
And I was like, what about the artist formerly known as Prince? Change his name to a symbol. They're like, I'm going to need verification. I'm like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
How brilliant was that, by the way, to leave your record label and then call yourself the artist formerly known as the artist formerly owned by someone else?
Yeah.
It's
Like a slap in their face,
still
dude.
Know me as that, but I'm now the artist formerly known
as.
I thought that was pretty brilliant.
That is brilliant.
All right, guys. Thank you guys very much for listening this week. And this has been extremely informative. I was really quiet because I know so little about most of what you
The show notes are going to be so long, dude.
So
like I have all this stuff written down.
I seriously
No, that's good. That's
I
good.
just took it all in. Honestly, there was just so much information covered there. I just don't know anything about most of the topics that you covered. And you got on a roll, man. I didn't want to interrupt you. There was a lot of information covered. And so I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having
And we'll
me.
definitely have you back. Like I said, we're trying to get Summer on the show to talk about the data center, and then we can get into the logistics of what goes into that also.
All right, man.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
See ya. We want to thank you for listening to this episode of Local A-List.
And as always, we want to thank our guests for stopping by and sharing their time with us. Hey guys, if you enjoyed what you heard, please go to iTunes and leave us a rating or a review. This really helps us out. And as always, we are looking for sponsors, preferably locally, but we will accept national sponsors as well. Contact us through LocalALists.com. And you can check us out at Facebook.com/LocalALists. My personal website is JamesPesh.com.
And mine is Stephen Morales, CPT.com. Check back with us next week for another episode.